Let me introduce you to the biggest operation in the U.S. Not only the biggest, but the most covert. I call it Operation Mindcrime. You might know it as Project MKUltra. The quest for mind control over the American population became so huge and unchecked, in my opinion, mainly in part because of our intelligence agencies. Their covert operations to withhold the truth from the public of what they were actually doing. There were numerous covert sub-projects of mind control being performed by the intelligence agencies. The true intentions of what these agencies were up to were easily dismissed or disguised as something else, that the American people did not stand a chance of stopping what was happening, and what I believe is still happening, just under another name. That is the most common tactic they use when fear of being exposed. Just change the name. My focus for this series are the individual people, or should I say men, involved in MKUltra and other projects dealing with mind control or brainwashing. There are multiple career fields that will be covered. That is how broad the mind control spectrum is. Some of these men are doctors, some are journalists, military, scientists, or engineers, while others are professors. This well thought out plan covers many different vocations with a deliberate intent. What type of person does it take to commit these atrocities on another? You will find the majority of people performing these techniques are men, and majority of the victims are women and children.
Kill Mary. She's a risk.
The individual men involved in these experiments are pure diabolical evil, in my opinion. Let's begin with Dr. Orlando Joseph Andy from the University of Mississippi. Dr. Andy represents a special kind of evil, in my opinion, because most of his victims were small children, ages ranging 5 to 10 years old. According to a 1973 article by the New York Times, and I quote, "But much interest focused on the work of one of the more controversial psychosurgeons, Dr. Andy of the University of Mississippi, and his operation on hyperactive, hard institutionalized youngsters. In one case, Dr. Andy removed a part of the brain of a 9-year-old hyperactive boy. The results of the first operation were not considered satisfactory, and several more such operations were performed in the end. The boy's hyperactivity was ameliorated, and Dr. Andy believes the operation prevented the child's being kept under permanent sedation and restraint. But critics emphasize that the boy's intellectual capacity deteriorated after the operations, and that since some of the important brain development continues through childhood, the youngster never got his chance to learn what nature might eventually have done for him. It is mainly because of this uncertainty that American doctors have shied away from using the scalpel in such cases. Through ortho operations on hyperactive children as young as 5 years old are performed with regularity in Japan, Thailand, and other nations. In the U.S. today, the number of psychosurgical operations is estimated at 500 to 600 a year and appears to be on the increase, though no one has really accurate figures." Close quote. The background of Dr. Andy, according to the Society of Neurological Surgeons, quote, Dr. Orlando Andy, born 1920, died 1997, was from New Britain, Connecticut. His undergraduate and graduate studies were done at Ohio University and the University of Rochester in New York. His postdoctoral training was obtained at the University of Tennessee in Memphis, Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, He became founding chairman of neurosurgery at the University of Mississippi School of Medicine in 1955. His appointments were professor and head of the Division of Neurosurgery and associate professor in the Department of Physiology and Biophysics, close quote. Quote, he established a neurosurgery residency training program. The program was organized to provide a strong background in clinical neurosurgery and basic neuroscience, the latter being done by 1 year of lab experiment work, correlating brain anatomy, electrophysiology, and pathology with behavior. In conjunction with Dr. Wolf, head of the Department of Psychology, he established a postdoctoral training program in experimental behavioral psychology, dealing with the anatomy, electrophysiology, and chemistry of behavior. Many of these doctors and scientists, in my opinion, use the prospect of healing or trying to find a cure or to gain a better understanding of how things work as a front for their real intentions. It's real easy to make it appear that you are trying to do something good while committing one of the worst evils in the process. These doctors are in the business of practicing medicine, meaning they do not have the answers any more than anyone else. They are just willing to do whatever it takes to further their research without pause to the care or concern of others, which ironically is opposite of the oath that they took to become doctors. Where does this all end? How far are we the people willing to go in allowing them to further their research on us, like we are guinea pigs, before we say enough? How can we stop this? Is it too late? In my research, I came across an interview with Dr. Peter Breggin, a man who was willing to say enough is enough with treating people like specimens. And a quote from Dr. Peter Breggin confirms my thoughts on this. And I quote, "That's always the case with psychiatry, that a medical language is used to disguise what are essentially matters of role in life or values or how human beings should live." Close quote. According to the article and interview on Dr. Breggin, quote, Peter Roger Breggin first came to national attention in February 1972 when Representative Cornelius Gallagher, Democrat in New Jersey, published Breggin's massively documented analysis of the return of lobotomy and psychosurgery in the Congressional Record, following which Breggin released his research data through the Associated Press. His months of research had unearthed a tremendous upsurge in the performance of lobotomy and psychosurgery in the United States. Psychosurgery, as defined by Dr. Breggin, is any brain surgery done with the intent to control emotions and behavior without treating any known brain disease. Close quote. Starting late in 1971 with several $1,000s of his own and no outside support, Breggin created one of the most successful promotional and political campaigns in recent years. In a period of under 2 years, the National Institute of Mental Health and the Justice Department terminated more than $1 million in research funds to the Neuro Research Foundation of Boston. More recently, the National Institute of Health turned down an application of $1 million from psychosurgeon Vernon Mark, following a campaign led by Breggin's Center for the Study of Psychiatry. Dr. Breggin is the man who stopped Dr. O.J. Andy from harming any more children by stripping the federal funding from these horrific experiments. And I quote from Breggin, "Probably the best method is simply publicity. because when psychosurgery is exposed to the heat of public opinion, it withers. For example, Dr. Andy, the director of neurosurgery at Mississippi, was operating on little black children as young as 5 years old, mutilating their brains with 5 and 6 operations in order to quiet them and make them easier to manage in hospital wards. Well, we managed to create such national publicity around this issue with the Associated Press releases that went into the Mississippi area with articles, with national magazines and radio coverage, that finally the University of Mississippi took it upon itself to examine Dr. Andy's work and his patients to an examination by a special committee. I think he knew that what he was doing would not be acceptable to that committee. He has not gone along with those guidelines, and he has not operated since last summer. So in effect, we've stopped Dr. Andy from operating by national publicity. So far as we know, the only large numbers were being done in Mississippi, although it's very hard to know exactly how many. Close quote. Final thoughts on this subject being, and I quote Dr. Bregan, psychiatry from its very inception has always been political, in that it's involved cooperation between the government and medicine for the control of large numbers of human beings. Close quote. And there we have it. Psychiatry is political for the purpose of controlling the masses. I define mind control as the manipulation of someone's mind so that they think and therefore act the way you want them to. The list of mind manipulating techniques is endless, and they want your mind because when they have it, they have you. Stay tuned for part 3, where we will be introduced to Edward Bernays, and I will leave you here with a quote from him. Bernays touted the idea that the masses are driven by factors outside their conscious understanding, and therefore that their minds can and should be manipulated by the capable few. Quote, intelligent men must realize that propaganda is the modern instrument by which they can fight for productive ends and help to bring order out of chaos. Close quote.
I remember how it started. I can't remember yesterday. I just remember